Hi, my name is Laura Burgoyne, and I'm excited to be joining together with my sister Connie Blackwood in the NOSA Unleashed podcast. Here, we want to expose the stigma surrounding mental health issues by illuminating and discussing real-life challenges and obstacles, keeping us paralyzed and fearful to move forward. Let us inspire you to believe there's more to life than what you're currently experiencing. You can rise from your despair and find hope for the future. It's time to end the silence, remove the stigma of mental health, and to pursue the path to purpose and fulfillment. We will do this together because no one stands alone. Welcome back to the NOSA Unleashed podcast. I'm Laura Burgoyne, joined here with Connie Blackwood, and today we will be continuing our conversation from last time about finding the treasure within. And specifically, we're going to be sharing our journey of how we personally came out of feeling worthless, rejected, and depressed and suicidal regarding our self-worth. And so I'm so glad, Connie, that you could join me today and we could share our personal journeys.
I'm glad to be here. And I wanted to start off the conversation today by talking about how I broke through my self-hatred. What a place to start, hey? But it's a great place to start, I think, based on where we left last time. And love in action is actually the biggest thing that actually helped me break through. Like, other people actively showing me love was what broke through it for me. And like I shared last time about my cousin, that was one aspect. But then the next time when I really hit a roadblock in this area, I sought you out, and you encouraged me and told me truth, and then said, you need to go on a journey with God because God will show you the truth as well. And I was like, okay. And so you were also a very valuable person that showed me love in that moment, because I was a mess. And as I look back, every time that I've had a breakthrough, it's been because someone showed me love and said those things to me that drew me back, that said something to me that showed me I had value, showed me I had worth, showed me that I was worth loving. And that's so important. Knowing that someone truly loves you for who you are wakes you up to that truth that you have value.
Yeah.
Then those blinders come off and you can see it, right? And it's exciting. So for me, I think a key turning point for me later on was one of the the pastor of our church decided that they wanted to have a leadership meeting. And at this leadership meeting, he went around saying what people's struggles were. And I thought I was the only one who struggled with these things. And so I shared, and it was so amazing because I wasn't the only one. There were other people at this table who also felt like they weren't good enough, that they weren't valuable, they weren't doing, like they weren't enough, basically. And I was like shocked because I thought I was the only one. And I was so scared to even share that with anyone. And then I shared it with this group, and that's opened the door for other people to share, because they were scared too, that they'd be the only one. But when I shared, then they could. And it was so cool because through that, God like showed me a picture of my value. And he showed me this picture of himself as a potter at a pottery wheel, and that I was the clay, and he was forming me with his very own hands as his masterpiece. And in that, he showed me, like, he planned me. He planned my life. He had a purpose. And he created me with intent. It wasn't an accident. He knew what I was supposed to do, and he made sure that all those elements were in there. And just like a potter with clay, we'll make sure they have enough clay. We'll make sure they have all the tools they need to make the ridges they want and the designs they want. They already know before they get to the wheel what they need and what they want it to be. And it was such a powerful image for me that I ended up writing a poem out of that. And knowing that God treasured me enough to make that such an intentional thing was amazing for me. And it unraveled so much of all of that garbage that had been built up from the time I was a child. It was amazing. And it was so freeing. And it was like all the blinders were finally completely gone. And that had been a journey. I mean, that journey started in my teenage years and continued till that point. Like that took years
Yeah.
to get to that point. And then when I think about the process, like every time that God spoke to me during that process, he told me how precious I was. He would start our conversations as my precious daughter. And it made me know that I was always precious to him. No matter what was going on in my life, no matter how bad that day had been, I was precious. And that really helped me every day knowing that. And God says that about all of us. It's written in his word, right? That we're all precious.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I really wanted to go back to again is God used people. So first he used my cousin, then he used Laura, and then the third time he used that pastor. Because had that pastor not said, "Oh, what are you struggling with? We're going to pray for you," would I have ever shared that and found that revelation? No. And so God uses people in our lives, and we need to make sure that we don't isolate ourselves and withdraw from people, because it's so easy to do, especially after COVID. We're used to the isolation, we're used to being on our own, that sometimes it's actually harder to step out now and be vulnerable and be honest with people. But yet it can change your life. It's changed mine.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's an incredible story, Connie. So it sounds like your process was more of like a gradual discovery and a gradual process of coming out of those beliefs of who you
Mm-hmm.
were into the truth.
It was like a little bit at a time over
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
My story's a little bit different, so maybe more people would relate to yours, but there might be a few out there that relate to mine. So for me, I was just like, I had gone to the point, I was so depressed, so suicidal, had absolutely no hope to live. And I remember this day distinctly, and I had determined in my heart that it was the last day for me to be on this earth. And I was actually at a school track meet, and I was trying to figure out how I could just end it all. And so I saw some glass on the ground, and so I picked it up and I walked to the end of the field where there was an old abandoned bathroom. And I went there with the intention of just cutting myself till I bled to death. And so as I was walking there, I just, kept scanning around, making sure nobody was following me, nobody was seeing me where I was going. And I enter the bathroom, I go in the stall, I lock the stall. And just as I'm ready to start cutting myself, these three girls walk into the bathroom. And, they're standing at the sink in the mirrors. They're talking, laughing, joking, talking about all their plans for the weekend, like just normal teenage girls. And I'm sitting in that stall, tormented by this, because literally the girls were just there and nonstop, would not leave. And I am, I'm just sitting in that stall and I just want to end it. Like I had no hope. There was no purpose for me in this life. There was absolutely nothing worth living for. And I just wanted them to leave because I knew that if I didn't, I didn't want to start cutting myself with them in there, because then they might hear me and then they might, you know, if they knew what I was doing, they might try to stop me. So I was going to wait till they left. And then it seemed like they were in there forever. And then finally, over the loudspeakers, we hear this announcement: the buses would be leaving in 5 minutes. At that point, the girls decide to leave the bathroom. And I had by then lost my nerve. And so I get back on the bus. We're traveling home. And I just said a silent prayer to God. in my head. And I just said, God, if you don't do something in my life, I will not live to see another day. And so it was a Wednesday, and we got home off the bus, and out of the blue, my mom says, "Oh, get your stuff ready. We're going to church." We never go to church on Wednesdays, Connie. So, what a surprise. She's like, "Yep, there's a special preacher coming into town. We're going to see him. We're going to church." So, we get all our stuff together, we get in the car, and we head off to the church. And so, as we're at this church, literally, it was like I was sitting in the pew, and it was as if nobody else was in the room. Because everything the pastor was saying, it was like he was only talking to me. And everything that he was saying was everything that I needed to hear in that moment. And at the very end of his talk, he said, if there's anyone in this room who needs a miracle from God, come to the front and we're going to pray for you. And I was desperate. I needed a miracle because I knew that if God didn't do something, that I was going to die that day. I was that desperate and that hopeless. And so I walked up to the front of the church, knelt at the altar, and just started weeping and bawling, hoping that God would do something, not knowing what he would do, but hoping with all my heart that he would do something. And so as I was sitting there, no one actually came to pray for me. I just was weeping there, and all of a sudden, I saw this picture in my mind. And the picture I saw was a mirror, and the reflection I saw in the mirror was the most disgusting and hideous thing I had ever seen. And I realized that that is what I had believed about myself. That was how I felt about myself. And as I'm looking at this putrid reflection, I was overcome by just, you know, the awfulness of it. And then all of a sudden this hammer came and smashed the mirror. All the pieces fell to the ground. And then I felt devastated. Because if that reflection was not who I was, then who was I? Right. And so as I was sitting there in those thoughts for a while, just being devastated, not knowing like what all of this meant, then all of a sudden I started seeing the little glass pieces on the floor form back together into a new mirror, and it was put right back in front of me. And this time the reflection I saw was beautiful. And instantly I knew that that was my true reflection. And as I looked into this mirror, I started hearing God speak to my spirit words like, "You're chosen. I have a purpose for you. You are valuable. You are worthy. You are all." And he just started to speak truth over me. And for me, my issue, it was almost like an instant deliverance that day, right? Because God finally got to me and was able to dispel all of those other lies. And so since that day, I have never struggled with depression like that. I have never been suicidal like that. I have never felt like my life had no purpose or any meaning. It was literally a 360-degree turn for me because I finally understood where my value came from. It didn't come from what people said or my failures or anything like that. It came from God because God was the one who created me, and who best to know who I am than him. And here he was sharing his heart with me about who I was. And so it was such an incredible transformation that day. And not to say that I never struggled again. That was basically the first day of the rest of my life. And I had to journey with God to discover the truth behind all the things he was telling me. And so, yeah, it has been a journey. But in regards to like me coming to a realization that I actually am valuable and I have purpose, and I have a reason to live on this earth, it was almost like an instantaneous moment. But the journey of walking it out, that has been gradual, just living it out day to day. And when the enemy or when others try to discourage you or to tell you the opposite, processing those things and taking them to God and really examining whether they're true or not. So that's my story.
And that's the thing. We're all different. We're all unique. And so we're all going to experience our traumas in different ways, and those things that led us to that place. And we're all going to experience healing in different ways. But I think the principles that we're sharing are universal. Like being able to allow people to love you is a way to break through, right? And
Yeah.
in Laura's case, it was, allowing God to speak truth to her, right? Like you can close out God's voice and not listen. She chose to listen. And so for her, that was a very powerful way that she was able to heal. And I think both of those are very powerful ways. And I mean, we've talked about a few in our previous one too, like focusing on those positive things about ourselves instead of the negative, and actually believing our family when they say things about us. Because, of course, they know us better than strangers or other people. They live with us, so they should know us better. And they aren't necessarily just saying them because they should. They're saying them because they know, right? And so, our culture tells us something different, but the truth is they know us. So they would be the ones that would be able to tell us more about what's really going on, even things we wouldn't necessarily see in ourselves. And when you were talking about hopelessness, one of the things that my husband shared with me one time jumped out at me. You can live 3 weeks without water. You can live 3 days without water, or you can live 3 weeks without food. You can live 3 days without water. You can live 3 minutes without oxygen, but you can only last 3 seconds without hope. And so when you're saying how hopeless you were, I believe what you're saying is true, because when you have no hope left, it's devastating. You have no purpose. You have no reason to go forward. And that's a very scary place to be.
Yeah.
So I'm very glad that you're able to find hope very quickly in that situation. Very glad. If you would like to hear, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like in regards to that, like I had become so convinced of the negative that even my family couldn't convince me otherwise, right? And I had gotten to the point where I was so desperate that unless God did something, it was over, right? And so, God had to show up for me in a dramatic way. But I know that that's not always going to be the way that it looks.
Yeah.
But in my character, I'm a little bit stubborn. And so sometimes God has to show up for me in those ways because that's the only way that I actually truly clue in. But I'm thankful that he did. And I want to just say to anyone out there listening, you might not be of faith, but you have been created for a purpose. And I believe you were created by God. And I have come to a revelation and a realization of how valuable we are to the Lord. And he he is desiring us all to step into a greater understanding of who he created us to be. And so if you are struggling and you don't know who that person is, and you are confused, you are depressed, you are anxious, you're not sure what to believe, I would just encourage you to cry out to God like I did. Say a simple prayer. God, show me who I am. Show me who you created me to be. Show me my value. And in little ways, he'll show you, whether it be through the words of a friend, through a poem, through something that you see. You're just going to feel the love and adoration and just this warmth. And God will show you in his own special way who you are and how much you are loved by him and how much he values you. And so as we're closing out this month of love and focusing on, the treasure inside, I just want you to consider for a moment that maybe there's a God and maybe he created you for a purpose. And if he did, then he knows who you are. He knows what you need and he knows how you're going to get there. And so I would just encourage you to to take that step of asking him and allowing him to journey with you in this process. And you'll never regret it. I promise you that. Sorry, Connie. I just want to say that before you went on.
That's okay. I was just going to say, if you'd like to hear my poem, it was spoken out in the February webinar on the NOSA website, which will be in the description. Or you can also read it in my book, which will also be in the description for this episode.
Awesome.
That's all I wanted to say.
So any last final thoughts before we close up for the day, Connie?
Just no matter where you're at, know you're valuable. Every single person who walks this planet has value. Whether you recognize it or not, they do. And even if someone seems reluctant at first, when you are loving them, don't give up right away, because you never know. You never know what's going to break through.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I hope that these conversations have sparked some hope in you and a desire to really find the treasure inside. If you do need any further supports or want any further mentoring or someone to walk you through this journey, feel free to contact us at NOSA Foundation, and we would love to journey with you to help you process this. And you can find all that information on our website at nosafoundation.com, and we'll also include that in the podcast notes. So have a lovely day, and we'll see you next time on the NOSA Unleashed podcast. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us next time on the NOSA Unleashed podcast.